CraicHouse, episode 8. How are you, fellas?
Good nabs. I love prepaid
Very good.
petrol pumps, boy.
All right. Okay.
No, I was on the
Tell
way
me
down
why you
earlier.
love prepaid petrol pumps.
Well, obviously, I was on because I was using them earlier, and I was thinking it's a great ability to not have to look at the digits when you're doing the petrol and like get anxious when it gets to like 49. So if you're getting 50 quid petrol, you have to start stopping and starting at 49.90 so you don't go over. But
This
when you
is true.
prepay, it's
In
just you kind of
Ireland,
switch off. You can just start daydreaming.
do they have when you put the petrol in and you can have a little switch or there's like a little lever that will automatically pump it? Do they have that?
No, not that I've come across any. I don't think I've come across them in the UK either. Or
They
maybe
have them in
don't have the knowledge of petrol technology.
maybe they have them in the States. Actually, last week I was doing a long drive, 3 hours drive up to northern Florida, and I went to a prepaid petrol pump. I was flashing. I was on like nearly empty. I tried to prepay it, put my card in the machine, like where you actually get the petrol out. It didn't work because it was a European card. I went in, I paid like $40 or whatever it was, went out, got in my car and drove off. I was down the motorway and I was like, oh fuck, I forgot to put the petrol in. So I came back anyway, sweating. And I go into the store. I said, oh, I didn't put the petrol. He goes, I know. It went off. Don't worry about it. I'll go back out and do it. So same thing, went out and I started to try putting the petrol in. Now, the hose pipe wouldn't fit into the slot on the petrol, right? And I was thinking, fuck's sake, what am I doing wrong here now? And so I held it open with my finger and started spraying the petrol. And I was like, this thing, yeah.
Oh.
And I was like, this is not going to work. I look behind me, the dude's standing there and he goes, listen, that's the diesel pump. It's a petrol car. That's why it's not fitting in.
I knew that.
Did you? I didn't know that. Yeah. It's pretty clever though, isn't it, to stop you? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I was talking to someone only the other week who has destroyed their working van, done the exact thing as you done, tried to push in the nozzle and put a load of petrol into a diesel engine.
Idiot. I know. But listen, we're here now. We learn.
We're rushing about the place. But listen, how is Florida? How is life over there?
Florida's good. Let me think what I've been doing. Last week, I went to this swamp, actually. It was a cabin in a swamp. So a friend of a friend here, he's a chief of police officer. And he has this cabin. His dad owned this cabin from like 1885. Now, northern Florida, for those who don't know, you may as well be in the deep fucking south because it's everything about it. The landscape, the people, like it's really hicky, to lack of a better term. Like, so we're in the swamp fishing.
Is that like, is northern Florida the deep south or is it like more east coast?
No, I mean, it is considered south technically if you look at the map. Like it's adjacent to, like, I mean, Alabama and all those states are very close to it. The further north you go in Florida, up to Jacksonville and the Panhandle, it's fucking redneck city, boy. Anyway, so this police chief officer, we were out there and we're having a few drinks in the evening, and I love a good story, Shane, a good war story. And I was asking him about his career because he's towards the end of his career now. And I was like, give me some real juicy stories. And I asked, you ever work on a serial killer case? Right? And he said, yeah, he did. I know. Well, kind of. Anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a bit weird, like, even asking about that.
But like,
whatever.
For some reason, though, there's something interesting. There is something interesting about that. Like, as much as it's scary and shit, that's why these fucking documentaries about serial killers are so popular.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
It is. He said that he worked on one case where there was a guy in northern Florida, in Tampa, Clearwater to be exact, who was murdering prostitutes. And he was out one night. They were building up a case. He was out one night on patrol. And he stopped this girl that was obviously hooking in the street. Now, she was like in her 40s. And he said, look, I want to warn you here that there's a guy going around and he's doing harm to women. And I really think you should kind of be careful right now. Maybe just stop this. And she's like, I'm not doing anything. Trust me. And he's like, no, I know you are. And he kind of had a conversation with her and he knew that she wasn't going to stop, but he just did what he did. And that was it. He reported it and then went home. 6 o'clock in the morning, he got a phone call. The same woman that he had left that report on was found dead only hours later.
Fuck.
I know, yeah, crazy.
Shit,
and
man. That's so sad.
Yeah, it is tough. And he said he did.
Before you told the ending of that, which I knew was going to be sad because it's a serial killer story, But when you mentioned that he pulled up to this girl and said, "Look, take it easy from what you're doing at the moment and stuff," I was thinking, imagine if she was telling the truth and she wasn't actually a hooker and he just confronted some random woman like going out for a night out or something. Like, I know
Yeah,
a prostitute. I'm not a fucking prostitute. Like, I know there.
but you look like one. You look awfully similar to a prostitute. That would be an
But it's very
insecurity that
sad,
would not.
very sad.
That insecurity would stay for a long time. But yeah,
Oh,
it is.
stop.
It is very. It is, and he said he did really kind of battle with himself to think, fuck, like, could I have done something more? Could I have really tried? But I mean, listen, it is what it is. That's life. But I asked him, well, how did you end up catching the guy? And he said that they'd built up profiles of suspects, potential suspects, and at one scene where a lady was found dead, there was tire tracks. So what they did was, with the two prime suspects they had, they got the car company to recall their tires, saying that there was a defect or whatever, and we're going to put all brand new ones on. And he said, look, this is better than fingerprints, because if the tire matches the exact one and that's the suspect, it's fucking golden. So that's what they did. They recalled the tires. They got a match, and then they ended up catching them. So,
Madness. Great though.
Yeah,
Like,
sad
America
story,
is
but
unique. No, but America's unique enough in the amount of serial killer stuff. Like, a lot, like, it does happen in
well,
the
it's
UK.
a big
There's a lot of
country as
famous
well, though.
cases.
You do have to
True,
keep that in mind. It
true.
is a bigger country, more people.
Come here, bud. Oh yeah. Well, obviously that's very interesting. Like, very interesting to be around a chief.
There was
priest.
one other
What
thing he
else?
said,
Any
actually.
other- I
Yeah,
imagine
one
there
other
was
thing that he
stuff,
said. I thought this was wild. So, I mean, he told me a lot of different stories, right? But did you guys hear that? My screen just clicked. Did you hear it? No, it was just me.
No.
I just had a notification on my screen.
I
All right.
received it.
Anyway, well, okay. Next time I won't say it. So
Unprofessional,
what
like,
happened
but you're
was,
forgiven.
I know, yeah. He told me
run a
lots
show
of different
here, mate.
stories. Lots of different stories. But another one he said was he had arrested this guy one time, fucking lunatic. He was hench, right? For those in America that doesn't know what hench means. Do they know what hench means in America, lads?
I don't know.
Maybe
It's
not.
I think it's a UK thing.
The UK, yeah, UK hench is like someone who's fucking built like a shit house.
Jacked would be the word in the States.
Jacked, yeah, jacked, man.
Fucking jacked, bro.
Yeah, crushing it. So anyway, this guy, he arrested this lunatic, and I forgot what the charge was, maybe aggravated assault or something. He said months later he was finishing a night shift. He got home from work at like 5:30 or something, got into bed at 6, and then he heard banging on his door like 6:30. So he was, when you just get into that type of sleep, you're going to be fucked waking up. And he just kind of confused, went to the door, opened the door, and lo and behold, it was the guy that he arrested months before. And the guy goes to him, I'm just letting you know that I know you live here. And that was it. And he was like, he had to think to himself for a second, shit, is he carrying? B, like, where's this going to go right now? This guy's come to his house to let him know, like, that he knows where he lives. And he found out the way that this guy found out where he lived was he was part of a canine unit, and somehow he got a hold of information about one of the dogs he had, linked it back to a vet clinic in the States, and somehow found his records of where he lived from that. Wild. And I said to him, well, could you not have arrested or done anything? He goes, no. There's no law to say you can't go up and say to someone, I know where you live. It wasn't threatening.
Yeah.
So another weird one.
But did he, in the end, what did he do about that? Did he move away or did he just stay put?
Well, I don't know if I can say this. Well, fuck it, I'll say it anyway. He basically said, well, in my mind, I was like, right, well, first off, I'm going to keep a gun by the door, which I never usually did. That was the first thing. And then he was just way more on his guard. Anytime anyone came to the door, he was a bit like, he would look through the thing to make sure who it was. And he kind of thought to himself in his head, if this guy comes back, it's going to be him, not me this time, which is kind of fair enough. Because if you've got a guy that's going through that effort to find out where you live, and and he's a big jacked fucking lunatic,
So he basically said he would have shot him if he came again.
In so many words, yeah. In so many words.
But you know what would have just stopped that right in the bud, or like nipped it right in the bud, is if he found out where that guy lived and went above and beyond. So let's say he went to his house and got in there, got into the kitchen, took off all his clothes until the guy came home, just standing there stroking himself, and just be like, listen, I know where you live, bud.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is,
fuck this guy.
I'm seeing him next week. I'm going to say to him, does that thought ever cross your mind?
Yeah. Because
Anyway.
if that guy's a lunatic and he's just willing to call to the door and say, I know where you live, that police officer, chief friend of yours, needs to think about being a bigger lunatic and like maybe smearing shit in the walls of a man's house, something. something weird.
Yeah.
And anyway,
Listen, I'll
look,
get his
I was,
advice on it.
I was
I'll
very
let you know on the
proud to
next
see.
podcast.
Yeah, please do. I was very proud to see Superhumans launching, and obviously
Thanks, bud.
I've been around you for the last few years when you've been grafting, putting a lot of hours into this, formulating the content and everything. So how does it feel to have it finally off the ground?
Yeah, you know what? I have to say, it does feel. At some points during it, it felt like a mountain that just was fucking not. You know, I was not going to be able to climb because it was very overwhelming. This is the first time I've ever had a tech startup or investment in a business. I mean, I suppose to give people might not even know what Superhumans is, to give a little bit of background on it. Okay, where will I start with this? Well, if you don't know, you know, I was a musician forever. So from my teens to my late 20s, I was in a band, and that's all I ever did. And at some point in my late 20s, I was having enormous issues with sleep, and I had ordered a couple of books, and one of the books had something with breath work on it. Now, I didn't really know much about it before that. And I remember the specific thing always stayed with me, that depending on how you breathe, you can influence your nervous system. So you can either get it to the calm mode, or you can get it upregulated to the stress mode. So I tried it, and it worked, and I was kind of fascinated with it. And I didn't do much with it then. I was just interested in it, right? I was like, right, this is a pretty cool thing that you have that you can control. And then I think after that, I tried freediving. I had got my level 2 license in freediving in the Canary Islands, which is, have you been to the Canary Islands, Shane?
I have, yeah. I was in Lanzarote. Beautiful spots.
Yeah, beautiful spots, right? Yeah, it's these islands that are owned by Spain. It's off the coast of Africa. But I went freediving there, and then I learned a lot about breath holding, which is a whole new wrinkle.
In that statement that you said there, sorry, Navs, but in that statement that you said there, you just summed up colonialism and imperialism. It's just fucking, it's a joke. It's these islands off the coast of Africa are owned by Spain.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's hilarious.
Fuck's sake, scumbags.
That's brilliant, scumbags. But anyway, so yeah, and then when I learned about breath holding, it solidified this kind of passion that I had for it. I thought, right, this is fucking interesting. But it stopped there. I just thought, right, I didn't think I was ever going to work into it. Then when I had moved to London, and we've talked about this before, I had fucking billions of different jobs. And at one point, Shane laughs at this because I think I fast-tracked myself. I decided to do personal training because I didn't want to work for people. It just didn't work, because being a musician for so long, you're just not in that structure. And when I started to do personal training, and I like this story because I love a good hustler story, I printed off 3,000 flyers, and I created a fake company.
I remember that. I remember you going around with them.
Yeah. It was, the company was, it was a woman first off on the flyer, and it was like the UK's leading personal trainers. And we can do kickboxing, martial arts, breath work, functional training, all of this shit. We come to you, because my mindset was like, right, if I can get a couple of high-end clients, it will give me enough time to start working on these workshops that I wanted to do with breath work and so on. So anyway, me and my twin brother, Hyder, God bless him, we went out for like 3 days, and we were posting them into all the wealthy areas of London. It took us fucking forever to do it. But I managed to get like 2 leads out of 3,000. And it did what I did. I got good clients, and I started working on these workshops. And I think then when I met Valentine's a big figurehead in spearfishing and freediving. So we actually combined all the knowledge I had and what she had to make these workshops. I actually don't know if I told you this, Shane. We created a workshop that we actually sold into a company in Florida a week before COVID hit. That was our first kind of foray into this. Yeah. And then COVID hit, and we ended up getting stuck in the south of the UK in this cabin. And it was a 1-room cabin, and there was nothing to do. So we just brought a shit ton of books, and we said, right, we're going to start studying this and try to develop it. And we ended up getting a little internet dongle because we're in the middle of nowhere. There was no internet. And we started giving free classes to people, and it was like a fucking big hit. Everyone loved it. And we were doing it just out of like boredom. We wanted to get, people were struggling at that time. And then what we said, right, well, there's not enough hours in a day to do it like this. We have to build a platform. And then we ended up getting investment. And the investment structure was 1 year to build it, and then the second year to get users on board. So this is the end of that first year. We built it. It was a fucking wild journey to get there. And I've never learned more in my life about anything than doing that. So right now we are in a stage where we're getting users on board. So that was a long-winded story,
and
but
listeners,
the reason why I wanted to say it was
it's interesting though.
I love hearing how people get to certain areas because the fucking avenues you take are crazy, and it's like I used to love hearing that, and that's why I thought it was interesting to kind of give the backstory on it.
I think it's an interesting story. I'm glad you told it, and I'm sure the listeners would think the same. And obviously, they can find Superhumans on Instagram and the website as well and stuff if they wanted to find you.
Yeah, if they want to learn more about breathwork, hit me up.
So just
Off
a
topic,
little
lads.
from my 2 seconds there now on that one with the breathwork. I think it's definitely something that I've always said is like, if you could package the effects of breathwork in a pill, it would be a fucking top seller. So anyone who's not tried it, get onto Superhumans and give it a go. And I think breathwork is, people might wonder what it is. Maybe you can give a bit of background as well on this, and have people listening think, what the fuck's breathwork? I keep hearing about it. But it's basically using the pattern of your breath to influence your central nervous system and to bring you into a certain state physiologically and mentally. So anyone who's not tried it, give it a go. It's fucking unbelievably powerful and beneficial.
It is, and there's a lot of avenues you can go with it too. It's not just about getting yourself relaxed for sleep. You can use it with a visualization. You can use it with mindfulness, body scanning. Like breath holding is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to build internal resilience without actually having to really go through it, because it's a tough thing that you have to do to get your body to hold your breath like that. So there's a million different ways, but yeah, if you find me on Instagram, you'll be able to see the link to Superhumans, the handle there, and reach out if you want to know anything about it. So good stuff. There's my little promo. There's my little advertising.
Yeah, brother.
Little congratulations for Nabs as well for getting it done. Let's give him a
Thank
clap.
you very much.
All the boys.
I really appreciate that, lads. I really do. Because Shane knows, me and Shane have been grafting like fucking hustlers for years. Proud of you too, brother. And I appreciate it. I do. So we'll keep updated on that kind of journey. I wanted to go off topic. Last week, I watched a documentary called Tinder Swindler, and I was blown the fuck away by it. I texted you both on the group chat, said, boys, get on this documentary. You've both watched it, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Can we go down a rabbit hole with this?
I'd love to go down a rabbit hole with this.
I've actually got some notes on it.
Do you? Edward, I fucking love you to bits.
I know.
Yeah, because it's a wild
It's
documentary.
a student of the game.
A student of the game. I'm going to start off with the ending, right? Fucking... The ending for me was dog shit. What about you, boys?
Wait. Should we give one of those fucking, what's it called when you're going to ruin a show for someone who hasn't watched it?
Yeah, a spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
Good man.
That's what it's called.
Go on, Shane.
Spoiler alert. But if
That's a good
Give the
point.
spoiler alert. Come
all
on,
right,
give it.
spoiler alert. If you haven't watched the show, stop listening to the podcast, go and watch it, come back and listen to it because you'll have much more interest, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go on.
Yeah,
Oh, I love it.
Nice one.
Right, so the ending for me, I think, well, you know what? With Netflix, when they do a TV series or a documentary series, most of the times I feel they water them down. And I assume that they do this because to stretch it out to more episodes, they're probably getting more advertising and everything else. This was the one time where I feel like they fucked up and they should have made this a 4-part series because there was so much information that was left out. And this is what I had with the ending. Like, to me, it was just such a quick, right, skip over the charges. They didn't really go into his background or childhood. It left me with more questions than anything else, the ending. And what about you, boys? What was your thoughts on the ending before we kind of get into the whole story?
Do you want to take it first? Or like,
Well, exactly. The notes that I had, exactly what I'd written down, were just all the unanswered questions. It's like
Right.
there's so many things that I wanted to know that they should have like gone into. So that was the main thing, really, that I took down.
it felt like to me that like the episode was so interesting and it was captivating, like to watch the whole thing. And as it got towards the end, it reminded me of like if you got your house painted and when it came to the final wall, they just kind of dabbed it up, gave like a little bit of a finish and then fucked off. You'd be like, what the fuck? But yeah, very little closure on like the outcome of where it could go and what happened to him and stuff. But you can go into more detail, Labs, on the ending.
But it also felt like it was, maybe it was just me, that I felt like they just did a quick promo for Tinder at the end to make sure, look, Tinder's actually good. Did you get that? At the very end with the girl, they were like, what do you think of Tinder? Oh, it's great. I'm actually on it right now. I'm swiping right now. It's kind of like, all right.
I was trying to see if anyone from Tinder was involved in it because it was like even the things that they had been through after using the platform. It's like there was so much. They were just like after, oh yeah, Tinder's great. Like it just
Yeah.
didn't make any sense.
I
It was
thought,
like,
yeah,
Yeah.
because the first victim, Cecile, she said that she ended up in a psychiatric ward due to the impact that it had in her life. And I was like, that makes no sense. Like, it's like, oh, that thing that made you get into a psychiatric ward, what you think of that? It's brilliant. I'd fucking
yeah,
definitely do it again.
Yeah. You know,
Like, what?
I've actually since listened to they released a podcast, and I've since listened to the first 2 episodes of it, and it is really interesting. And I'm going to go into more detail there, but I wanted to discuss the actual type of fraud that happened, because it's a unique one, and there's a lot of nuance to how that plays out and the character behind it. Shane, you're more intelligent than me. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I definitely was thinking about this and took a bit of notes on it myself. The type of fraud that Simon Leviev was committing was romantic fraud. So romantic fraud is like a very deceptive and seedy type of fraud, because you're hijacking someone's emotional kind of their emotional systems, and particularly the emotions of love, which is, it's a cunty thing to do, because love is such a vulnerable emotion and a vulnerable place to be with someone. You have to have a lot of trust and stuff. So
Would you say it's the
typically
strongest
romantic fraud,
emotion when someone's in love? Would you say it's
by far, by far,
like you lose all sense of rationale or anything like this when you're in
100%.
love?
Yeah, because you're
Well,
completely vulnerable to that. Like, yeah, it's definitely the most intense emotion, I would say. The one that people are the most dizzy. You know, that kind of butterflies
yeah,
and going around spinning. The world looks like a beautiful place when you're in love. So yeah, it's definitely, and again, that's why it's such a deceptive and seedy form of fraud. But this to be like why it's a bit different, and why a Netflix documentary was made about this particular type of romantic fraud was like a usual one would be, and people have probably heard about this, but like a connection would be made up on a dating site, and it would usually be through like emails or messages, maybe phone calls. People might send images to each other, but there wouldn't be any face-to-face meetup. And then a request would come from one of the parties of like some family member falling ill, and they need some money, and they request the money
right.
off the person that they're in this relationship with. So in that way, you can kind of almost, like, as much as it's still a scummy thing to do, when you're behind a laptop or a computer and you're building a relationship with someone, you're kind of removed from the actual getting to know the person fully and having to see their face and touch them and stuff. Whereas Simon Levy went above and beyond to build a deep connection with these women. That's why, in my view, he was able to extract so much money from them in these types of fraud. But yeah, so the type of fraud is romantic fraud, but the way that he went about it, it's not an uncommon type of fraud, but the way that he went about it was absolutely unusual, bizarre, and very, very few people will be able to actually go through with it.
And what about the type of? I wanted to get your thoughts on the type of women or people in general that would be susceptible to that type of fraud. Do you think that there's a profile there? If that
Well, I
makes
think
sense. Do you know what I mean?
you made a good point though, because I think, all right, men and women are both susceptible to fraud. We know that just because fraud happens to both sexes all the time. But I think when it comes to this romantic type of fraud, where Simon Levy built up a status and a story that most people in today's society will find appealing. You know, the high life, fancy hotels, fancy restaurants, fast cars, private jets. But these women, and I think Cecile, the first victim in the documentary, gave a good
Is it
background to maybe
Cecilia or Cecile?
Cecilia, probably.
Either
I'm
way.
probably pronouncing
All
it
right, go
wrong.
on. Keep going.
We call her C. Hope you don't mind, C.
Okay.
So she gave a description at the start of like growing up watching Disney movies and always having this vision that Prince Charming would come and sweep her off her feet. So that to me is the first like warning sign, and having that belief from such a young age built into you that like the world is all about finding love and these romantic fairy tale endings happen, that would leave you probably with your guard down a little bit going out into these engagements with people that you meet for the first time and just thinking like, okay, this Prince Charming thing has actually happened. You know, this has happened. I've met this person that's going
Right.
to make everything happy ending. And I
I mean,
think
it's good to know just on
second,
that part with the Disney thing. It's good to note that like that's not real life. Because a lot of people are like, no,
oh
well, why
fucking
can't I
hell
have
no.
that? Like, why? It's not that you're trying to be a Debbie Downer saying, oh, you can't have. Of course, you can have an amazing romance and all this, like, you know, these experiences. But the reality is, we're human fucking beings, complicated people, and it's just the world isn't like that. So having that mindset and view, it does fuck you up a little bit when you get into different relationships and if you're not aware that it's
Yeah,
not like that,
that's a good point. But I think that one thing alone does not make someone susceptible to this type of fraud. I think it has to be coupled with potentially. Again, this is just I don't really know the girls in the show, so I can't really. But this is me thinking what might be the case. Potentially, they come from a sheltered upbringing where they were maybe sheltered from physical harm, or like maybe they had a very strong family bond and there was no kind of hurt or pain or disagreements in their household. And that coupled with the idea that you can have Prince Charming come along and sweep you off your feet, that's a dangerous place to come from. If you maybe watch Disney growing up and you come from a place where there's like people trying to rob you growing up, or like there's arguments and fights in your house and there's things going on that just make you realize like, okay, the world's not all pretty, like not all beautiful, then you'd be less susceptible to that, I think. But the fact
it's a good point.
that potentially these people have, like Cecilia or Cecile or C said that at the start, that she watched Disney, she had this idea that Prince Charming was coming on, and then also I just had this feeling that they were from quite a middle class shelter background.
Yeah, I mean, there was actually, this wasn't in the movie, but it was. I listened to it in the podcast. There was one girl who they didn't feature, and her story. The reason why they didn't feature because it didn't materialize, or the fraud didn't materialize with her. What happened was she was in Amsterdam, and she was only there on, I think, a layover for a couple of days. She was traveling to Australia. Now she went on Tinder. She met him. He said, "Come over to the 5-star swanky hotel, wherever he was, for drinks." She went over, and there was multiple people with him. There was different women, and he was saying it was an assistant and everything else. So she was a bit confused already, because when you go to meet someone, there's a group of people there. It's a bit strange. And he was like terribly rude. He was saying that she had hairy arms and fucking that she needed to wear more makeup and she didn't look good, and just being basically a dickhead. So she left, and that was it. And then the next day he had texted her saying, "Sorry about that. Look, I'll bring you to a 5-star restaurant tonight and wear something really nice." And she's like, "Well, I don't have anything nice." And he's like, "Well, I'll buy you something." She's like, "Okay, great." And again, I'm not trying to dismiss the severity of like what happened, and I'm not trying to make excuses or put any sort of blame on it. However, you do have to question a little bit. If someone's being an asshole to you, clearly, but the only reason why you're interested again is because there's a potentially you can get something out of it financially, or like some swanky restaurant. Like if this guy was like, "Look, do you want to meet up in the park?" She probably would have said, "Fuck off." So you have to also question that motivation a little bit, though. A little bit. You have to be like, well, you are playing with fire. Like any precarious situations I've got in my life, I can tell you why I did. I knew that there was potential for something to happen. And I think if someone's being a complete fucking cunt like that, but you're still willing to go out again, you have to look at that too, a little bit. Right.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not trying to
agree with you there,
dismiss,
actually, yeah.
you know, I'm not trying to say gold digger. I know there was points made that, they're gold diggers and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily saying that, but you also have to be real with like your motivation behind it.
This is going to go deep now, but a very good
Go
point.
deep,
I think
baby.
there's actually there's definitely that at play. But I feel that, as I mentioned earlier, everyone in society, or most people, are kind of distracted and look up at that kind of lifestyle as attractive and would do things to get there, potentially even put up with people being cunts. But
Yeah.
it's a
I've done it
question then of,
myself.
we've all probably done it, like, as the games people play, like. But if you have a child who's brought into the world, and if you build a very strong understanding of self-worth and self-respect, and if someone's able to understand that, like, the difference between material pleasure and like impulsive pleasure, and then true happiness within yourself, then of course they'll probably go through life and never do what that girl did, which is actually put up with some dickhead just to get a nice night out and get a nice meal. But a lot of people, we live in, as I mentioned before, we live constantly looking for like nice things, put an image on Instagram. That girl's motivation could have been something as simple as, "Fuck him, I'm going to go and get a photo in this swanky restaurant from my Instagram page." That's literally it could have been harmless like that. And then obviously, as you said, you have to understand that not all people are what they are saying. Like, yeah, language. I think this would be a good part maybe to go into Simon Leviev a bit deeper, because that's three things about the victims potentially, and there's probably loads more that goes into it. But like,
Yeah.
Disney kind of fantasy world, sheltered upbringing, and also motivations that probably aren't the most like innocent or, you know, victimless, which is a good point.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that they're victims for this, like, but it's just, why would you go and have a meal with someone who fucking said you had hairy arms? But anyway,
But what about Simon then as a person? Because I felt like another thing that they left out was really
Yeah.
building a picture of his. Because listen, you're not necessarily born like that. I mean, there could be some, nature, nurture. Okay, there's a whole debate around that. But I'd love to know his experiences from early life all the way up. They touched upon it a little bit. But what do you think about him as what was wrong with him?
But
Basically.
look, we can do this very quickly if you want, or we can go deeper. But the very quick version
Okay,
is
go deep.
he's just a massive cunt. He's just a massive cunt. But
Right, we
the
know
deeper
that.
version is, all right. I'd like to see his upbringing or get more detail on his childhood, because I feel that he definitely might have learned those behaviors in his young life, like where people take advantage of each other, and the end goal of everything is to get something out of it for yourself. But that, like, his personality was a narcissist, like 100% narcissist.
To the
And
biggest
obviously,
degree, yeah.
to the biggest degree. And everyone listening, I'm sure, is aware of what a narcissist is. But just in case you're not, you can give a few things that would stick out in a narcissist would be someone that's quite self-absorbed, someone that is obsessed with getting the objectives that they want, usually for themselves.
Lack of empathy,
Someone that
huge
lacks
lack
compassion,
of empathy.
lack of empathy. And obviously, so if you're obsessed with yourself and your objectives, that is a very nice thing to have alongside that, to lack empathy and to lack compassion. So
also, in my opinion,
Simon
I
Leviev
think
was a narcissist, but he wasn't.
Impossible to deal with too, because they don't know that they're a narcissist. So they actually think they're in the right all the time.
Right.
They never accept responsibility.
Well,
it's very,
Believe their own lies.
Yeah.
But there is narcissists out there that have learned to play the game. Like that's, as you know, I'm very of the opinion that a lot of the people in power in this world are narcissists to a degree, and just learn to play the game.
But I will say, I think there's, because I would, if I had to be very or introspective, I'd say there's potential, like hints of narcissism. Maybe mine would show itself more and being a bit more selfish. But I think people have it, and especially if you're going to get to a certain level in the world and business, you probably do have to have a little bit. But I think there's maybe a spectrum of narcissism, and I think his one was on the fuck.
Of course, it's like everything, there's a spectrum, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think someone can be very high on the spectrum of narcissism and also be very intelligent and understand how to manipulate people without. Like Simon Leviev was someone that was almost delusional with his narcissistic traits. Like he was a grandiose narcissist, which is the worst form. And you see that by his ability to meet women, build a relationship with them to the point of sleeping with them and taking them out for meals and going around the world with them. And then he was able to the whole time just have one goal, which was to extract as much financial gains for himself as he could off his victims. And that's so hard for most people to understand, because you have to, someone's falling in love with you and they're showing you every aspect of them, and you're willing to go to the lengths of, getting into bed with them, and then you're still just the whole time you're just all bullshit. Everything's fake, and you're just thinking, how can I get more money? How can I get more money? The story that he'd built up and the status that he built up, he was willing to sacrifice other people's life, basically, because if you get in that much debt, it's so hard to get out of. Like, as that girl Cecilia mentioned, mental struggles just damages you forever, probably. He was willing to sacrifice them like lambs to the slaughter in order to get this status and this lifestyle that he thought was more important than anything else. So the most shocking thing to me, and to probably a lot of people watching who have watched that documentary, was how he reacted when he got confronted. And that's what's so strange, because most scam artists, when you confront them, or when their victims confront them with the knowledge that they're being scammed, they'll just vamoose, like delete every form of contact they can. They'll try and disappear so that they can't be found. This guy got proper angry and was shouting, but he was almost disgusted he was being accused of such a horrible thing. And that's so unusual, and it just shows the extent of narcissism that he was going through, and why he was able to go and do such horrible things. I had a funny thought though, because when you hear the voice note that he sent back to Cornelia, the second girl in the documentary, when she confronted him, and he just sounds so angry. But I was going to say, Nabs, right, I want you to say to me, like you're Cornelia, I want you to say, Shane, I know you're a scam artist, and I'm going to imagine if Simon Leviev was from Cork, right? So let's go, Nabs.
Shane, I know you're a fucking scam artist.
What do you mean I'm a scam artist? That's a terrible thing to say to me. I'm not a fucking scam artist. Fuck you, right? You don't fuck with me.
He sounded like a demon in that. It was, and then a minute later, he'd be like, "Sorry, baby, I love you, baby," and all this.
I know. Oh my god! But he was just. He thought as well that he was more intelligent than he was. I think that was a good point they made in the documentary. He wasn't. They didn't want to show him as this genius. He was just someone that does that type of fraud as well. Actually, I was thinking about this. You probably don't
Deeply
have to be that
insecure,
intelligent.
huh?
You have to just be.
No.
But just you have to be insecure. You have to be evil as well. That's the main thing. You have to
Yeah.
be. Once you're evil enough, you can probably, because people are vulnerable, man. When they fall in love, they're vulnerable. They're like, as we mentioned, there's loads of reasons. But it was such an interesting.
There was actually a comparison.
documentary,
There was a comparison to when people fall in love. It's almost like the same as traits of compulsive disorder, where they're just not. It's just they get so they're fixated, they're fascinated, they're irrational, and they're constantly mesmerized and fascinated, and they cannot stop thinking about the other person, which in turn makes them do a lot of things that they wouldn't do if they're thinking rational. That's the emotional side of things as well, isn't it? Like that's how it's really important to understand your emotions and be able to step back from them and maybe observe them a little
100%.
bit and say, well, what's happening right now and why am I feeling this way and everything else. But there
was
other
what really helps with that is breathwork, and I know a really good platform you can go on to get some knowledge in that. It's called Superhumans.
Good, yeah. Oh, amazing! You should get on it. So there was other few points on it that I'd like to cover. There was a lot of unanswered questions for me. The main one being, and I actually have info on this, was when I think it was Cecilia or C, whatever her name is, when she went to meet Simon in London, there was another woman there with a baby. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that, Shane? And she said that it was the mother of his kid, and she was kind of quiet and everything else and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, they didn't even talk about her once. And I was thinking, like, why did they leave her out? I listened to the podcast, and in the podcast, this woman had been scammed by Simon, I think in 2015. Could be wrong. It was years before
Norway,
in Finland. In Finland.
Oh, Finland, yeah.
In Finland. And he went to jail for I think it was credit card fraud from her. He went to jail. How the fuck? And she declined to talk about it. So how did he fraud her? And then years later, she's with him, and she never warned the other girls about it. Does that not raise questions in terms of was she involved in it, or like that's to me is baffling? No,
it doesn't like so when it comes to victims of emotionally damaging things and crimes. Actually, a lot of the times, victims end up being perpetrators themselves, and I felt like that maybe she was just like, fuck this, like I don't give a fuck because it happened to me now, so everyone else can go get fucked, and I have a child to take care of, and I want this guy to keep giving me money. So that's what it felt like, because I can't understand why else other than just being like, yeah, fuck it, like if this is what the guy's going to do and he's my baby daddy, I need to get money off him. So
another thing I thought was, so they said, I think it was over 10 years or X amount of years, over $10 million in fraud, and he got 5 months in jail. They never went into the charges. It just, for me, it sounded fucking crazy. If you don't pay 50,000, 100,000 in taxes, you're probably going to get sent to jail. So how is that possible? Is that possible because there's no law around it, or what? What did he get? No, I don't actually know.
The only thing he got charged with in Israel was using a fake passport.
That's it?
As far as I know, yeah. I think I looked it up because I was wondering myself, and I don't think he's been charged with anything in Europe yet.
Is it a case of like the reason why it's not is because it's like me saying, Shane, listen, I need that money, I'll give it you back, and then you give me the money, and then it's, well, there's no law to say that you willfully give me the money. Is that, do you think, comes into play, or what?
Fuck, we'd have to get a lawyer to come on and answer that question. I think there would be some laws against that, though. I imagine if you're telling someone a lie to get funds off them, it's probably illegal in some way, shape, or form. And they have communication as well. They have messages and stuff, so they can prove that he was being deceptive. Yeah,
I mean, look, there's quite a lot of unanswered questions on this. I thought it was a fascinating documentary. I'd love to see a follow-up on it for sure. The other thing,
did they mention anything about the bodyguard in the podcast? Because that's the thing that confused me as well. The random fella that was the bodyguard. Like, who was he?
There was 2 points on it. So he's actually fighting the case now, suing, saying like he didn't have any knowledge of it and everything else. And they don't actually know. They don't know if he was taken for, was he also scammed or manipulated. Yeah, a victim. What else was it? They said they got a security expert on, and he said in that field with that high end security for celebrities or whatever, he said it's that they're crying out for work like this. They'll take anything, these guys, because they need work, and he thinks there could be potential that maybe he wasn't involved in it, but they just don't know. Again,
But
it's
one
tough
thing,
because
if he wasn't involved, how did your man get the photos of him all bashed up and shit?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? He could have been manipulated. He could have said, "Look, let's do this for this reason or whatever else." Who knows? But that was they didn't. They just
could have been manipulated. Simon could have
Yeah.
twisted his nipples until he gave in and done what he wanted him to
He
do.
was a big boy. I wouldn't twist his fucking nipples anyway. Big boy.
Big lad.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was a lot of things on it. The other thing that I heard was, again, I wish they'd gone into detail in this, that years and years before all this, I think when he was in his maybe late teens, early 20s, he was in Cyprus and working some shit job. And he had convinced a girl there that his father owned some airline and he did credit card fraud. They ended up getting caught with it. She didn't have a clue what was going on. They think they rented a car, and then it came back later that the cards were stolen. But he made her rent the cars, and he fled. And they never mentioned that too. And she was left with like 2 years of dealing with this with the embassies and all these different lawyer bills and everything else. So they left that out. So again, why they left it out, I don't know. I think, to me, it feels like that this was time sensitive, that they had to get this documentary out for some reason, which is why they fast tracked it and they didn't make a 4-part series. Also, it sounds like Simon right now, he's trying to create his own story or come out with something himself. So interesting fucking shit, boys. I thought it was amazing. So
yeah, he has done some interviews and stuff on TV in Israel. So I'd love to. I'm gonna have to look more into it because it's just fascinating that he's still fucking, he's trying to plead his innocence, which is madness.
All right, moving on from that, Ed. We just, whenever we finish a topic and we don't know what to do, we just go, Ed. Yeah, we can call him. I call him Edward, whatever. Eddie, how's life? What's going on in the back end of CraicHouse?
The back end of CraicHouse.
Everything's good, man. Yeah. Everything's good. We got a lot of the Conor McGregor video blew up a little bit. That's been our best video yet. I think it's on 65,000 views now. So that's good.
Thanks to everyone who's watched that video and hit the subscribe button.
Could I just say something really quickly on that video? Sorry, Shane, to cut across you. We didn't intend to make a video and put it out on YouTube with Conor McGregor. What happens is Ed's our producer and he does a fucking great job. We talk about whatever on the podcast that comes up. Sometimes we have an idea or something, sometimes we don't. That one was just in the news, and Ed masterfully put together clips and different excerpts into it. So we didn't intend to make that video because I know a lot of people were commenting on certain things with it, but it seemed to have done very well.
Little fucking mistake. But again, I was speaking, there was a lot of stuff that I was saying and the tiniest of details people fucking comment on, but the whole, the point remained the same and the point was all still valid at the end of it. But
we also had some nice comments.
Ed, well done on that, man. It's a smash.
Well done, Ed.
Piece. You made it very entertaining.
Thanks, mate. Well, as a result of that, we got a lot of comments, and I wanted to.
Any negative comments?
I love the hate comments. We got this one. I wanted to say this one first because I think I understood it. It sounds like a very nationalist sort of thing, but I wanted to hear your view on it. So, a fella here commented, "What do you guys at CraicHouse think about Ireland becoming a minority in their homeland in the next few decades?" So,
but Ireland becoming a minority or Irish?
Well, he said Ireland, but I think he meant the Irish, yeah.
About Ireland becoming a minority in their homeland in the next few decades.
Shane will answer this better. A, you're there, and B, yeah, you know more about that stuff.
Definitely, I suppose it's hard because you're reading a comment, but I think you're right there. It sounds like whoever this person is coming from a place of, racism, basically. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like racism. If I was to surmise it in a word, it sounds like he's being racist. But
I would tell him to err
I would tell him to err on the side of caution in his thoughts because he's going to build up a dislike of people from other places for no reason, really, because it's not the case that... Firstly, I'd say the Irish for fucking as long as our history is going, have been going around the world in search of a better life because we were under oppression by English concept. Now, but we were under a lot of, there wasn't much prosperity here, wasn't much opportunity here. So the Irish have gone all over the world in search of work, and now we are in a place in this country where we have the standards that you would consider first world. So why would people not want to come from their broken homes and their hard war-torn countries and look for a better life for themselves? That's the first thing I'd say to that, man. And the second thing I'd say is the Irish becoming a minority. Like, when people come to Ireland, let's say immigrants come and they're first generation immigrants from wherever in the world, their kids will be born into the culture of wherever their parents are from, but also they'll be born into Irish culture, and they will adapt and they will become as much Irish as any other kid, that grows up here. And that, for me, what was beautiful about a place like London was that, like, it was such a blend of cultures that also had its own culture. Like, London has such a unique, like, people who grew up there are so unique, and there's such different nuances to the areas and the cultural background of the people and how they influence each other. It's great, like, and I think that's going to be a positive thing for Ireland. Irish culture is so strong. We're just going to create some just more beautiful Irish people. But that's all it is.
I wanted just to touch upon, and I know Shane said English cunts when he said that. Now, obviously he's joking. Now, we all know the history, and Shane's obviously very proud,
some
as
people
am I,
don't,
of my Irish
Some
culture.
people don't know the history.
Some people don't. Okay, but
English people don't.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, sorry, lads.
No, but you know what? It's listen. It's said, but London. Me and Shane met in London. All of the opportunities I've had in my life, honestly, came from me being in London. It did amazing. It was amazing to me. It was amazing to my ma, who went to London to do her nursing career. And I have to say, yeah, just because I know people might on the surface think, oh, like Shane's not like that at all. Like, you know what I mean? It's.
I listen.
I
I've
think
worked in London. I lived in London. I love people. I love the English people. I love people in London. What it is basically it's not the people of the country. It's like the history of the hierarchy, the monarch, all of the, like, it was just a manipulation of people. And I think it's so funny. I have two little things to say on that, because I heard someone mention before, if you could get a member of the IRA in the 70s and someone who was working on the streets of Belfast as in the British military, and you could remove their uniforms and everything else, and you sat them down at a pub, they would both have very similar socioeconomic backgrounds, probably from working class poor backgrounds. They probably both want the same things. They want, to better their lives for themselves and their family. They probably have the same fears about people that they love being hurt in some sort of fucking whatever. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, when I was coaching Darren Stewart in the UFC, I was lucky enough to walk onto the stage with him, with Dana White and Joe Rogan and the boys when he was weighing in, and he would have the Union Jack, which is the British flag, walking out. And I had to say to him the first time that he asked me to do it, I said, look, Darren, I have no problem doing that, but I can't hold the Union Jack in my hand while you get on the scales. And he didn't understand. He was like, why not? Like, what's the story there? I was like, well, obviously I live in England, so I'm not like anti-English, but I said the flag represents like what my grandfather would have thought about that flag and what I think about that flag are two different things. And I have to respect the fact that it did represent a lot of bad things for the people in my family, my heritage. So I just don't want to hold it with pride. Like, and he was cool about it in the end. I was like, look, I'm just going to put it on the floor and give it back to you when you get off the scales. It was so funny then, because
it was a funny thing.
The octagon.
I remember this.
You were going to mention about Mike Russell?
No, go on.
We were walking to the octagon on fight night, and Mike Russell took the Union Jack off Darren and threw it over my shoulders. I was like, if you watch the video, I'm like,
because I remember you called me up that morning of the weigh-ins, and you were like, Jesus, boy, I don't even know what to do. Like, he was actually really thinking about this, because he didn't want to be an asshole. Now, I'm going to be full disclosure. I thought it was a little bit petty, but I understand your perspective. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I thought, because I don't think necessarily just because you held it, it actually means that you do. Because only how you feel is really how you feel. But
to finish up on that, look, to finish up on that, you asked about the comment that guy said, and if that guy is listening, I would say, love people, man. Don't start hating people. Don't start disliking people, and don't be blaming immigrants and people who come to this country for whatever hardships you're going through. It's usually not their fault. It's people at the top. So,
not for me. Listen, my dad's from Iraq, and and I seen the struggle that he went through.
Taking our jobs, the cunt.
Sorry, taking the women. But yeah, I mean, listen.
Hey.
But look, you know what? I will say on this, I do appreciate that dude did comment, and I appreciate that anyone commented on it. And
Of
just
course.
to,
I listen.
just to say as well, when we're talking about a subject, it could be Tinder Swindler, it could be fucking, the size of someone's Mickey, whatever. If you have a thought on it, comment on the video, because it gives us a good discussion and we can talk about it on the podcast. But we appreciate any comments, even if they're negative. It's fun to see. So that's that. We've got less than 10 minutes left, boys. I think we've got about 8 minutes left. I'm looking at
We
the
do.
screen time.
Yeah, we've
So
done
Ed, get on
we
with it,
smashed
baby.
out a long episode.
Should we just get on with the Ask Reddits? Although
No,
quickly,
was there
someone did
anything
comment
else?
someone commented on the Conor McGregor clip. Someone called Shane Ariel Helwani.
I seen that. I loved it.
Did you see Ariel
love this.
Helwani? That's brilliant. For anyone who doesn't know,
Yeah.
Ariel Helwani is the most prevalent and I would say probably famous MMA journalist. He does a great job. I do really enjoy. I met him a few times. I do enjoy his show. So that's a great compliment, Shane. Because we're actually
Talk
gonna
to them, and we're going to be getting more MMA.
we're going to be getting into more MMA stuff. Yeah, we're going to do a podcast dedicated to that. Let's have the Ask Reddits because time is fucking
Alright.
ticking, boys.
Let's bash them out. Okay,
Also,
first
I'm
one.
dying for a fucking
have you
quiz
ever-
right now.
Me too, actually. Go on.
Yeah, me as well. I've been necking this water. Have you ever been banned from establishment or shop, and for what reason?
Yeah, you know what? I've been banned from a whole road. I've been banned from a whole area.
I know
Shane,
this
you
one,
know
actually.
this.
I know this.
Yeah. So really quickly, it was New Year's Eve. I think it was. I can't remember when. Fucking ages ago. Anyway, I was maybe about 15. This road that I was staying on. I was staying at a friend's. They had the most amount of Christmas lights that they have. It's an area in Wicklow, so they'd all compete against each other to have the most amount of lights. It was always in the newspapers. It was like out of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Loved that fucking movie. So
Yeah, great movie.
I had the idea drunk that if you twist off one of the bulbs, the whole set goes off. And I thought, well, you know what? If we twisted off every bulb from every fucking tree or every decoration from every house in the morning, everyone would be wondering, scratching their heads, going, what happened? Too many drinks, twisting them off, maybe stepping on a few. Maybe I stole a Santa. Who knows? Whatever. And the next morning we woke up. I walk out into the street. I look right. There's cops. I look left. There's cops. They come up to us. I've got Christmas lights in my pockets. And we got fined. Like, we got arrested on the spot. It was at a time when my man and I were struggling big time with the business. So they fucking like, it was just the worst. And subsequently, we got banned from ever going back on that road. That's a great one.
That's hilarious. That's brilliant.
I could just picture Nabs and Hyder walking onto the road and people coming out with sticks just chasing them. Hey, fuck off.
Mate, it was bad. It was in the newspapers and everything. It was bad. It was bad. Bad time. But anyway, fuck it. You're a teenager. You do this stuff. Next question.
Okay, number 2. What parenting trend do you strongly disagree with?
Shane, take that away.
Thanks.
So I have to take that one, I suppose. That's
course
basically
you
for
do.
me, yeah. Okay. Jesus Christ. So, well, geez, I'm more time conscious here. Like, I have to answer that. Okay. The answer I'm going to give, I'll have to give more detail on in another episode because it's a long one. Because something that I've thought about recently, and I think I don't understand the way, why or how parents do it, and that's telling your children that they're non-binary at like a very
controversial.
early age when they start questioning.
Controversial. I love it.
I have good
Keep
reason
going.
for
Keep
it.
going. Go on.
Okay. So I
Cancelled.
think there's very, I know, yeah, we're gone. There's very little as a child that you understand about the world, and there's very little things to cling on to. So being a boy or being a girl is one of those things that is like, you know, okay, I'm a boy or I'm a girl, my age is this. Like when kids start understanding the world, I'm 5, you know, they keep telling you how old they are. You know, I'm 5, my brother's 4, whatever, they keep telling you their age, and they'll say, oh, I like football. They like try to cling on to some identity, and to take that away from them, I think can be very confusing, very dangerous. That's not to say now, like if your child is of the age of comprehension and they're saying to you, dad or mom, I feel like I'm actually a boy when I'm a boy, I'm in a girl's body, or vice versa. Then you can start maybe talking to them about, you know, what are the feelings, and also the fact that when you're growing up, you can be fucking so confused by everything. It can just be a crazy time. So I'm not saying that transgender isn't a thing, and I'm not saying that people need to identify as man or a woman for their whole lives, but I do think that to do something so young as damaging as removing the only few things that you can cling on to as an understanding of the world can be dangerous. And that whole conversation anyway is such a complicated one. I've had discussions with people where I changed my view afterwards, but I do think that from a parenting trend, I think it's dangerous, and that's it. People can challenge me on it. I'd love to have people question that, because I think
I don't think you listen
something that I want.
at such a young age. I think when you really don't have a full grasp of the world and you're not fully developed in terms of your brain and everything else. I think it's a reasonable argument to say maybe, it's.
Now, do you know what? I'll say on that as well, right? Because people, when they talk about this, is another one of those topics like COVID, that people, if they believe in one side or the other, can get very emotional, can get angry. And whenever lately, what I'm trying to do is when I come to any topic like that, I try to think, okay, people obviously have this view about the world I don't understand at all, but that doesn't mean I should be angry about it, because I need to, if I want to understand where they're coming from, and also if I want to potentially get them to understand where I'm coming from and change their view, you need to have an understanding. So, like, if I'm being honest, I cannot understand in any way, shape or form why someone would tell their child at such a young age that they're not a boy or a girl. But people do, like, and I have to try and understand why that would be the case.
I like that. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left. Ed, do we have one more?
I was going to say I'm going to make the executive decision to just leave the last one out, because I know that.
Look at him, Nabs. Big boots. Who do you think you wear?
Well, I'm just saying, I know that Shane's got. I don't know. Nabs probably does as well because he's been about. But I know Shane's got a good answer to this, and I don't want to waste it because we've got about a minute and a half left, so I think we should outro it. And
oh, fuck
we'll save
it. I don't want to hear what it is, though.
Well, you can have to wait.
Just say the question.
We can leave it on a cliffhanger.
Nabs. If you tune in next week, you'll hear it, alright? So tune in next week.
Well, tell you what. At least give the question, and then we'll do it next week.
I know Shane's got a good answer to this.
Don't say the question.
Shall I say it?
We'll do a vote. We'll do a quick vote. Should you say it and leave it on a cliffhanger or not? I'm going to say yeah. You should say it.
There's two of you, so it's going to be.
No, but he's going against me though. So you're involved too, Ed. There's three of us in this. Why don't? I'm going to say yeah. Say the question. We've got like a minute left. Quickly, do you say it or not say it?
All right, fuck it. I'm going to say it because we're going to leave you on a cliffhanger. You ready?
There we go. Okay.
Who's the most famous person? Who's the most famous person you've ever met?
Oh, we've got great stories here.
I know my answer straight away.
Nav's got one as well. Okay, great.
Oh, I've got a great one. Okay, we'll do it on the next one. Bollocks. Okay, that's a good one though. I've got a great story for that.
That was a great episode, boys.
I love doing that, boys.
Everyone listening, subscribe, please. We need to get more. So anyone listening who hasn't subscribed, just hit the subscribe button. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, two things. Go to the Instagram page, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, subscribe on the YouTube, and do leave comments. We love hearing them. We will read them out on the next one. But we appreciate everyone's support. We love doing this, boys. I love you so much.
Hey, love you, boys. Good stuff. Good stuff,
boys.
Love you, boys.
See you, lads.